Hey Margot, so I'm going to do a run through of a section of the speech, and it's kind of, it's a chunk towards the end, but there's not an ending, and a pretty large chunk of the beginning is also not there. So this is just a little over, probably over 15 minutes section that I'm doing, and I only know how to post 15 minutes of video at a time, so there might have to be an awkward pause at some point, just to warn you. But yeah, so here's what I have so far. Okay, and I'm still looking at notes right now, so I would definitely memorize this a little bit more. Anyways, so I was told that I had bipolar disorder type 1 rapid cycling. And what this meant for me is that I would go through periods of depression, and it was really bad. I mean, it was really hard to get out of bed and do the little things like showering, brushing my teeth, and I would skip days of work sometimes. It actually got so bad that at one point I had to end up quitting my job. I would cry a lot. I felt like someone had died, actually, and no one had. It was just this horrible feeling. And I would also have periods of time where my mood was more elevated, and I'd have more energy, and I'd want to do more risky things and go out with my friends, but I would also turn pretty angry sometimes and have a lot of irritable energy. And I would get into fights with people, and it just wasn't pleasant for other people and not for myself all the time either. I would spend several weeks in each of these types of moods, and they'd alternate back and forth. So in a month, I would spend a couple weeks severely depressed, and then I would spend a couple weeks in an elevated state. And I would have about a week where my mood was more or less what I considered normal. And it was devastating. You know, I couldn't plan anymore. I wanted to go on a trip with a friend for a really long time, and there was just no way to plan it because I was always cycling in and out of these different mood states. And I want to clarify, there's, you know, some images in the media that are not always so accurate. Like, I always hear this Katy Perry song, and she talks about how you're hot and then you're cold, you're yes and you're no. And it kind of gives this image that people with bipolar disorder flip back and forth all of a sudden. But for a lot of us, and for me, these moods are actually, they happen over periods of time, either weeks or months, or in rare cases, even years. So yeah, I was dealing with this rapid cycling bipolar disorder, and I was trying different things. I was trying medications. That was really difficult because I would get hopeful about medications, and then often they would really have no effect on my moods. And you know, I was just starting to lose hope because I'd often get side effects from these medications that were almost as horrible as what I was going through. And, you know, medications can be really helpful for some people, and sometimes they're not helpful. So it's just really important to know yourself and figure out what works for you. But at this point, I was losing a lot of hope, and I was asking the doctors, you know, how long is rapid cycling supposed to last? And they would just say, you know, it really should have stopped by now. Like, all the research we have says that it should have stopped. And so with that news, I was even more devastated. I was starting to become really burnt out. Every time an episode would hit, I just didn't know what to do anymore. I'd been trying different things like exercise and eating differently, and nothing really seemed to be affecting my moods in a substantial way. Because my hope was so low, I really needed to involve others in this process. And I was lucky to have supportive people around me. My parents, you know, they were able to hold hope for me when I wasn't always able to hold it. For them, it wasn't a matter of if I will get better. It was, when will you get better? You know, they would tell me that mental health is something that is treatable, and the first option might not work, but we will figure this out. And, I didn't really believe them, but to just have someone in my life telling me that was really helpful. So I ended up going to a residential treatment center, and that means that I stayed somewhere in this house, and treatment was provided at the house, because it was getting difficult to even get myself to therapy in the morning, or I just needed a lot more support than I was able to get at my house. And things did end up starting to change for me when I got to this treatment center. I actually figured out that I was having some physical health problems that had gone untreated, and this dramatically affected my mental health. As soon as those were being properly treated, I started to do a lot better, and that was such a relief, because it had been 2 years that I had been in this rapid cycling pattern, and I had to give up so much, school, work, everything just came tumbling down around me. So when things started to improve, it was really amazing. One thing I learned, that sometimes just being able to hang on and, sit out what's going on for you can be really important. Time is really hard. It's really hard to just wait, but, and I was trying different things during that time, but I think that's really important. And there was a lot of things I was trying while I was in the treatment center that I know helped contribute to me getting better. For instance, I started running, or more like jogging. I started jogging slowly. There was this guy that worked at the treatment center, and he was like, "Hey, Cameron, I think that you could run a half marathon." And I was like, I don't think so, because I can barely get out of bed in the morning, so there's no way I'm running a half marathon. But he was persistent, and I was kind of curious, so eventually one day we found this training schedule. I taped it up to my wall, and I committed to it. And I would go on these long runs with him, and sometimes they would be really difficult. And I would have thoughts like, I have to stop. Like, I am going to stop running. I have to stop running. But I had made a goal, and I had decided that I was going to do those runs. And I learned a lot about life from running that I didn't expect. I learned that I was going to have those thoughts. I'm one of those people that sometimes gets to that edge and feels like there's no other options, and I'm going to think that I just want to stop, I want to give up. But it's possible to have those thoughts and carry on anyways. And so I started to think about that in not only my running life, but my personal life as well. So I had a lot of time to reflect while I was at this treatment center, and I realized that when I left, one of the things that I would really need was structure in my life. So I did a lot of research on things like job opportunities and volunteering and classes and things that I could get involved in when I came back, because transitions can be really stressful. So I put a lot of work into that. So I started working at a peer center I started volunteering first, and then I started working at a peer center. And that was a really great place for me to get connected, because my coworkers are really supportive, of making it a really great work environment. And when I say peer, what I mean by that is we've all been through our own struggles. Some of us have had mental health diagnoses, and we come together to form community and to create spaces where it's okay to talk about what's going on for you. And, for me, that's awesome. I think it's really important to have as many spaces like that as possible. I try to be open with my friends when it feels right. And yeah, my workplace became and has become, one of my places of support. When I used to think of support, I used to think of what I think of as maybe traditional support. So maybe you talk to your counselor at school or your therapist, or you call a hotline. I've done all of those things, and I still access those kinds of supports, and they can be really helpful. And then I also started to realize that support can look like all different things. I play soccer often, and that's one of my ways of getting support, even if I'm not best friends with everyone on the team. Just those small interactions, or maybe you get coffee at the same place every day. That person having that regular routine, that's another place to have support. I know for me, building a support network has been a really big part of staying well for me. That's something I always try to do. When I live my life now, I definitely take mental health into consideration. I take fewer classes when I'm going to school, because I know it helps me manage my stress better. It's not just because I have a mental health disorder that I think it's important to evaluate what fills you up and what drains you in life. I think we all have mental health, and it's really important to consider, because I know if I don't, then I start to crumble, and my life starts just crashing down, because mental health isn't talked about enough, but it's something that we're all experiencing daily, and all of our decisions really impact also. So yeah, I can prepare for mental health. I can prepare my life in a way that considers mental health, but at the same time, there are always going to be things where life throws me a curveball, and things will come up in my mental health that I can't necessarily prepare for. I didn't think that I would go through that rapid cycling period, because I had been in treatment for a long time for bipolar disorder. I had been an Active Mind speaker, and I talked about bipolar disorder, and I thought I would just be speaking for many years, but I actually had to take a pretty long break, because I just wasn't doing well at all. I can't control that I went through that period of rapid cycling, but what I can control is how I reacted to it. I spent a lot of time learning how to take care of myself. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here and start a new one so that I don't go over the 15 minutes.